Hello there. I'm EnviroBoy. This is my channel. It is Thursday, and I'm having a good Thursday. I hope everyone else is having a good Thursday. We're going to do some writing today, like we do every day that I stream. I say that as if that's some sort of new exciting thing. I say, no, that's what we always do. We always work on some writing. Although I suppose it is a little different this time around. I'm continuing with my sort of new push to try and work on a variety of things beyond just always writing the campaign that I've been working on. And so to do that, this past Tuesday, we worked a little bit on just writing some generalized history. We were working on the sort of the pantheon for my world a little bit. And today, oh, there goes the kitty. Bye, kitty. She gets kind of tired of my voice if I'm sitting here talking all the time. So I bet you, yeah, you're gonna see her right in the back. There she is. Hold on, let me try an angle so you can see. Whoops, knocking the desk a bit. There she is. You can see her. Hold on, there she is, right there. Hold up. She's gonna go sit in that chair. She's gonna curl up. Let's wait for it. Let's wait for it. It's magical. It's magical because it's a cat. It doesn't matter what else it is. She's well, okay. Now that we're watching, she's going to, whether intentionally or not, make it take forever. But at any rate, yeah, last Tuesday we worked a little bit on the pantheon for my world, and today I want to work a little bit more on some of the sort of home house rule, homebrew systems and stuff that I like to use in my game. I feel like there's always work that can be done with those things, always like tweaks that can be made, and I kind of use house rule as kind of a loose term when I'm sitting here thinking about things to write, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a house rule so much as just like a definition of a rule, or working on things that incorporate existing rules and stuff like that. Just things that are mechanical components of my games. There she goes. Now she's gonna curl up. She's gonna curl up in the blanket that she blends in with perfectly. So there she is. Yeah, you can see her. She's gonna clean herself first, and then she'll do that. I should really invest in another camera so we can just have a cat cam. I should invest in a handful of them, so wherever she's sleeping, she can be. We can invade her privacy and watch her while she sleeps, because that's how she does when I stream. She sleeps so that way she has the energy to bother me about food once I'm done streaming. That's our that's our system. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. But yeah, at any rate, I want to work more on some of that homebrew stuff, because it's good. It's relevant stuff, and I think it's fun to sort of ponder and think about and share ideas on how we can modify the game and the game systems a little bit to get ourselves, having unique experiences in all of our games. We don't necessarily want all of them to always be the same. So I'm going to get us swapped over here to our primary channel. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. So here we are. This was what we were working on last time on Tuesday, which we're not going to work on so much here. I kind of want to go into, honestly, today, just because it was so much fun the last time I did it. It wasn't last week. It was the week before. Last week was a weird one, and I wasn't able to keep up with my normal streams. But the week before, we were spending some time working on just sort of building up the backlog of rules and descriptions that I use for my sort of enchanting system that I like to use in my homebrew games and my players have fun with, in which I kind of create ways in which players can research and use just existing spells for the sake of imbuing, enchanting, imbuing their own personal items. I always use imbuing because enchantment is a school of magic, and so it's like, but I don't just use the enchantments because it's a homebrew system, so so we call it imbuing just to avoid confusion and all of that. But I kind of want to work on that a bit more, just because it's one of the most fun components that I have in my games, I think. But it's one that it requires a lot of time to really get it all written out and consistent and functional. So I just kind of want to keep taking some time. This isn't the only thing I ever want to work on for these streams, but today, it's what I want to do. And I think a lot of that, too, is just because since last week I did miss out on doing this stream, and this is only the second time I've really done a stream of working on like house rules and stuff like that. I kind of want something that's a little bit familiar and easy to work with here. So that's what we're gonna do today. Also because it's my stream and I can do what I want to do. So haha. As I always say, I dive into that comedic well way too often. I need to stop acting like that's funny and recognize that it's really just arrogant. So, at any rate, this is the template that I use for this system. So just to kind of give it a quick breakdown, I mean, the description is kind of already there. I already kind of said it, but just to make it definitively clear for anyone who's not familiar with how I do this, this is part of a homebrew system, a house rule system that I use, in which players can find things called enchantment tokens. And those tokens can be used to attach, like you can attach the token in some way, shape, or form, however the player chooses based on like the flavor of it. They can attach that token to one of their items, whether it's a weapon, some sort of piece of armor, a piece of clothing, whatever it is. They can attach it to an item to imbue that magical power into that item to sort of create a magical weapon. And the idea is that within my games, this kind of replaces the concept of just finding a +1 sword or a +2, +2 gauntlets or whatever. The idea is that this replaces that, so rather than just finding an item that gives you a +1 to every attack or something like that, it instead offers the ability to once a day or twice a day or whatever we decide for the spell, be able to do some sort of extra interesting magical effect. And the way I go about it is I just go through the list of existing spells within D&D 5e, since that's what I'm playing in these days primarily, and just sort of conceptualize what that spell would look like if it was attached to a weapon, and we sort of kind of create the rules for that, so that once it's imbued, we've got the idea. And the idea too is that these aren't necessarily steadfast. Like, it's not like there is it's not that there's a lack of flexibility in that. If players have other ideas on how that token or that spell might appear on an item, I always work with them. But if we have sort of an established starting point, it makes it a bit easier to not go a little too wild and crazy with all of it. So that's kind of what we're working on here, and we've been working on our conjuration magics, and I like to just kind of go from, spell to spell, just kind of go down the list alphabetically, by level, and just kind of think about it. And it's a fun system that, gets used in my games. But the other thing about it too that I really like is it's a really fun creative writing exercise to kind of work on and come up with these things, to just sort of imagine, like, okay, we've got this established rule, how can we turn that into something else within here that still kind of stays true to how it was originally created, but also gives us sort of this fun new way of using it. And to me, that's just a really fun creative writing process that just kind of helps keep my brain, generally speaking, thinking about things in non-steadfast, concrete ways, which I think is really important, especially as a DM for, D&D, because I don't ever want to get to a point where I'm too immovable in ideas, because the fact is D&D is a game of shared imagination. So I want to be able to practice like enforcing rules while still being malleable about it, and I feel like this is a really good exercise for that. So why don't I stop blabbing about it and let's actually do it. So first, let's get our resources here. I always just go to the spells here. We're working on, oh wait, no, I want to see advanced things. Oops, advanced filters. We're working on our conjuration is what we've been working on for the fun of it, right? Yeah, we've been working on our conjuration imbibements here. Like I say, I use the word imbibement. Oops. I misspell imbibement? I did. I like to use the word imbibement just to avoid confusion because there is an enchantment school of magic. And so like imbibement, you know, imbuing it is kind of, you know, it's a nice synonymous thing with enchantment, so it's a good way to differentiate while still meaning the same thing. But I don't know, that is more pontification on a word than most people are probably interested in. So we're doing conjuration here. We're working on our level 2 spells. So we just add these filters in, and then it'll automatically be alphabetized for us, and we can go from there. So let's see here. Is this one? I was gonna say this isn't one that I can use because this is a Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, which I have not purchased at this point, and do not plan on doing so today. So I take it back. We're not going to do 2nd level. We're going to do 3rd level. That's fun. That's fun. Things are going to get even more powerful and chaotic. Like, genuinely, that's fun. I love the level of chaos that some of these, like, that spells start demonstrating as we get higher and higher in spell level. I really love that stuff. I just love D&D in general. I mean, come on, man. Fantasy world to just do whatever we want in. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so what I need to do then is I'm going to take this. We're going to just copy that. It's going to be easier. And we're going to do... where is it? Where is it? New page below. That's what we want. Level 3. Imbibement. There we go. So we'll do that. And... I mean, we've got... I guess I could, like... get that fancy background and stuff going. Yeah, I want to do that. I think I kind of want to do that. Yeah, because we've got our origins and stuff of the magic, but that's kind of more lore and everything like that. We're not going to worry about that today. But I'm just going to copy and paste this just to make it look a bit prettier. Delete page, that's what I'm trying to do. Well, boy, oh boy, My observational skills are clearly limited today. Things right in front of me with words I'm not finding. Copy, paste that there. Level 3 imbibement. There we go. And then all we gotta do is just come up here. Come on. Come on. You can handle this. OneNote. OneNote for some reason. Oops, that's not what I meant to do because I delete that. I want to take this, copy that, and then just paste it all in here. Yeah, OneNote. The one thing that I've been consistently frustrated with using OneNote. For the most part, I really love OneNote and would definitely recommend it as being a good option for using for your own note-taking and world-building projects. Because I think it has some really good. It's simple and easy to use, but still well thought out and useful organizational systems with these, sidebars over here and everything. I think it works really well. But one thing that's really frustrating about it is that it is a really mediocre word processor, which is so bizarre considering it seems like they could just in theory copy all of the tools within Word and put them in here, but that's just not really how it works. So, I'm sure there's reasons for it that I don't understand because I'm not a programmer, but still. Anywho, let's actually do what I keep saying we're going to do today and do some writing here. So, our first spell that we're going to work on today is Call Lightning. Ooh, that's fun. Call Lightning. So, let's just go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of a... Actually, you know what I want to do? I want to just paste another one there so that way we can just easily copy and paste it from the same page rather than having to bounce between pages and everything. Alright, so our first spell that we're working on today is Call Lightning. Call Lighting. No, Lightning. I do like the idea of Call Lighting. That's our Ring of the Grammarian level thing right there. Doing Call Lighting. And all it does is it just, brings a lamp into the battle. Could take it like a WWF route and like you have to smash people with a lamp. That'd be fun. Okay, so let's take a look at the spell as it is here. It's always the important part. So we got a range, because I always try to stay as true to the spell as possible when we're creating an imbibement concept for it. I don't want it to be unrecognizable, right? Because to me, when I think about spells within my world, and this is diving a little bit into the lore, but when I think about spells, I do think that they, I do always imagine that they have kind of like a discrete power and effect, because while I don't, like, I think of magic as a nebulous thing, and there are infinite possibilities, I do also think that casting a spell requires very specific steps to get very specific results, right? So it's like the nebulous concept is why we can do imbibement, but if you're imbibing with the Call Lightning spell, you're getting pretty specific events. I kind of think about it as like, I almost think about it as origami, right? Where it's like you've got this piece of paper, and folding it has an infinite number of ways to do it. But to create a specific, piece of artwork, a specific product, you fold it in specific ways. And so that's kind of how I view magic within my world. Is it's like when you're just looking at the raw ether of the world and imagining all of the things that you can do with it, it's a very nebulous, it's a very blank sheet situation. But if you want to specifically have the effects of Call Lightning, there are very specific things you do to get very specific results, and so on and so forth. So that's why I kind of try to stay as true to the spell as possible when I'm creating the imbibement of it. So as written here, storm cloud appears in the shape of a cylinder that is 10 feet tall with a 60-foot radius, centered on a point you can see within range directly above you. The spell fails if you can't see a point in the air where the storm could appear. For example, if you're in a room that can't accommodate the cloud. Okay, all right. So I think honestly that we can leave that kind of as is, and just do. So I like to go down and do these like add a bullet point for each paragraph, just so we can kind of like address all the effects of the spell and sort of figure out how they will look. How they will look within the context of this. And so now with this one thing that we are going to do, so some spells, when we're doing an imbibement, will, I imagine, kind of always have different possible effects based on whether it's being put on a weapon or an armor. But some of them, it's just kind of the same effect. And I think this is a situation where there's not actually going to be variation. So I'm going to say on any item. And then, let's see here. And then what we're going to do here is paste that there. Delete all of this crap because we don't need it. I mean, it's good to cite things, but I'm not turning this in for a grade or trying to publish it, so. And you're all seeing exactly where I'm getting it from. The citation is in the nature of the video here, so. But anyway. So it's on any item. Bullet this, please. I want this bulleted. There we go. A storm cloud appears in the shape of a cylinder that is 10 feet tall, with a 60-foot radius, centered on a point you can see within range directly above you. You can see within range directly above you. The spell fails if you can't see a point. Yeah, so honestly, I think we can just kind of leave this unchanged, but I'm going to say when the spell is activated, a storm, and actually I want to limit this too. Pretty much all of these I try to do as once a day. Like they recharge naturally. Like the item just kind of collects up the energy of the ether around you, but when you cast it, it kind of burns out the battery, and so it's once per day. And a lot of times that'll be a benefit of enchanting it at a higher level. It takes longer, it takes more effort to enchant it at a higher level. But oftentimes I'll have one of the benefits of doing that be that you can do it more than once per day. So it's like, are players willing to spend more resources, put more effort into it to get that more use, or are they content with just once per day? So we're going to say once per day when the spell is activated, a storm cloud appears in the shape of a cylinder that is 10 feet tall with a 60-foot radius, centered on a point you can see within range directly above you. That's so big. 60-foot radius, that is huge. It's absolutely huge. It's awesome, but it's huge. Okay. When you cast a spell, choose a point you can see under the cloud. A bolt of lightning flashes down from the cloud to that point. Each creature within 5 feet of that point must make a dexterity saving throw. Creature takes 3d10 lightning damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. On each of your turns until the spell ends, you can use your action to call down lightning in this way again, targeting the same point or a different one. So I have some ideas. This one's going to be mostly a flavor edit to make it an enchantment, but I have some ideas on how this can look. Because the idea that I have here, to make this actually like an enchantment, rather than just like, you know, the item casts the spell and then it serves exactly like the spell, the concept for me is that the item is the conduit for the lightning. So when you cast the spell, choose a point you can see under the cloud. A bolt of lightning flashes down from the cloud to the enchanted item, and then channels out of the item towards that spot. Right, so it's like if you have it on a glove, you point and the lightning will like hit the glove and then conduit out. Each creature within 5 feet of that point must make a dexterity saving throw. A creature takes 3d10 lightning damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. On each of your turns until the spell ends, you can use your action to call down lightning in this way again, targeting the same point of a different one. So I think that's good as it is. Now, like I say, it's mostly flavor to change it. But hey, you know, sometimes that's all the fun that you need. Is just like the thing that I like about this too is it gives non-magical people the opportunity to enjoy some of these types of things. And I don't consider it too overpowered to sort of give, you know, a fighter the ability to do something like this, because the concept is that doing this and using their turn, right? So on each of your turns until it's been, you can use your action to call it down. And so the idea is if that they have like 3 attacks for their action, though they sacrifice those 3 attacks to instead do the lightning, right? So it's like it becomes a strategic choice if they want to do that for crowd control rather than continually laying into a single enemy, or if they're thinking that they can be particularly effective with lightning damage against a singular enemy. Things like that. So I don't consider this to be too broken. And even if it is broken, okay, well then I'll just throw more enemies at my players to make them feel like badasses while handling larger hordes. It's like, that's fine. I never really understand why people have issues with that concept. Some people don't like, but I mean, I guess I shouldn't judge. Some people just really like to play things rules as written, and that's fine. In fact, there are times when that's the type of game I really want to play, just a very rules-heavy, by-the-book approach to things. But ultimately, it's a game for people to have fun. So if the game is overpowered gods for characters fighting off even larger hordes, then it's like, great, do that. That sounds awesome. So, hold on one second. My apologies. Okay, yep, we're good. So, yeah, so this next part here is if you're outdoors on stormy conditions when you cast the spell gives you control over the existing storm instead of creating a new one. Under such conditions, the spell damage increases by 1d10. Alright, yeah, I like that. I think that's good. I think where this one as an enchantment is going to, or as an imbibement, I think where it's going to start really shining as something separate from just like casting the spell is with our possibilities of either having the item become cursed in the enchantment process or having it become sentient, which are both things that I absolutely have rules for so that they can be possibilities when players are doing their own enchantments. And I love doing it that way because I think it just adds a little bit more excitement. So let's see here. Oops, I gotta do one more thing here. My apologies. Again, my apologies. Let's see here. There we go. Alright. So at higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 4th level or 4th or higher level, the damage increased by 1d10 for each slot level above 3rd. I like that, and I like that as opposed to being able to call multiple storms per day. I like the idea of all of these being once per day. So again, it's like there's kind of that scarcity concern that'll force them to be sort of, you know, careful in using it and not just going willy-nilly in every battle doing it, right? It limits to a certain degree. And I think that's an important part of an enchantment. Like I say, as a different approach rather than being a spellcaster that can do this like really powerful thing multiple times per day. If you can only do it once per day, that's a pretty valuable limit. And the only reason I'll ever increase the number is if there's not like a damage component like that to make it more powerful. You just make it more frequent. So, cast a spell using is when you. So instead, we're gonna say when you enchant an item with this spell at fourth or higher level, damage increases by 1d10 for each slot for each. We're just gonna say each level above third, and we'll just do it that way. Like I say, because it also incurs a lot more cost up front. Like it's a hefty cost up front too. It like changes it from being, oh, you can get this done in, 20 hours of spending downtime to like 100 hours. Like it's a pretty steep incline to do these things, so you really have to be willing to be dedicated to it over the course of a campaign to get really high level powerful items. And that's another reason why I'm not too worried about it, because even this one will be much more intense in terms of enchanting it compared to like a level 1 or a cantrip imbibement. So I don't know. All that justification aside, I'm sitting here like trying to justify it. Ultimately, as I say, it's my game, and my players like the system, so we use it, and it's fun, and we have a good time with it. And I highly encourage any of you out there to have that be your primary concern when when coming up with these things. But now the fun part, if the item becomes sentient or it becomes cursed. So with sentience, I always like to come up with ideas, because I'll randomly, when an item becomes sentient, I'll randomly choose its personality, right? And so it's like, and I put notes about good, evil, lawful, and chaotic, right? So we can kind of combine those, and then the neutral is just that the thing's like a boring person. So if you have a true neutral item, the item's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it's like super uninteresting, which is still funny when you have like just the most indifferent sword in the world or something like that. So with this one, sentience and curse, if it's good. So good and evil, I always like to do that, like whether or not it's obedient. And lawful and chaotic, I like to kind of have those be whether the spell is under control or not. So if it's good, we'll say the item is very careful in how it conduits the lightning, making sure it hits only enemies within the targeted area. So it's like it controls where that lightning goes so that the lightning damage only hits the creatures it wants to. It almost does like a very specified branching system where like the static and the electricity just kind of goes and branches where you would want it to go. Whereas evil, I'm going to say the item will oftentimes choose to hurt friendly beings as well as enemies. And I'm also going to say, depending on the situation, may even hurt the wearer as well. So it's like the idea is that it may like utilize the wearer as part of its conduit system so that the user also gets hurt in doing it. So it kind of becomes this question mark there. So lawful, like I say, if it's under control or not. So lawful always hits intended targets with no collateral to people or environment, which is kind of like a standard there, but I always like to imagine that's a benefit for like that makes it a lot less frightening if you fail you know, a cast, or like if someone has like a dexterity saving throw on lawful, you know, it'll make sure it doesn't hit anything behind either. Like the item will then redirect the lightning or something like that. Whereas with chaotic, we'll say often casts out extra bolts of lightning, damaging environment or, man oh man, I'm struggling to spell here today. Environment or unintended targets. Boom. So if it's chaotic, it just is all over the place, and it does that. I don't know that we have anything else that needs to be added for this one, though. So I think we're just gonna go ahead and get rid of that one there. So now if it's cursed, this is a fun one. I always consider cursed items to be things that are not good or evil. They're just things that are more powerful, but also problematic, as we see here. So I always have like an extra powerful benefit and a problematic side effect, and then what happens if you try to remove or get rid of the item. It's almost like I consider the item to be something that like isn't necessarily sentient, but has this tendency to bind to people as a way to increase both of your power together, but at great sacrifice. So the extra powerful benefit that I'm thinking of here, it says within 5 feet. So I'm going to say can hit targets within 10 feet at caster's discretion. So it gives the caster the option to expand it to 10 feet if they want to, right? So it's almost like they have extra control over it, and it can attack more people in that wider range. But the problematic side effect that I'm immediately thinking is caster always takes half damage, takes half of the damage caused to targets, right? So you roll the damage, and whatever that is, the caster will take half of it, which I think is a pretty twisted, nasty thing, and I like that. So now what it takes to remove. So this always, like, there's always magical means, and so I'm going to put that there. Requires magical means to remove, or the item will cast itself against the wearer and anyone else who tries to help remove it. So it's like if you try to take the item off, it will call the storm, and it will cast lightning damage into you and anyone who's trying to pull it off. So it's like if you're willing to take that chance, right, then it's like, okay, you know, you can push through and try and get it off that way. Otherwise, you'll need to use magical means to get rid of it. And I think that's actually really cool. I think that's really cool. I think for this one, the sentience or curse options are what really sell it as an interesting enchantment option here. I think this one, Call Lightning, when you just imbue it on an item with all the stuff, it's very samey to casting the spell, just very, like, much more flavor oriented than actual function. But those sentience and curse possibilities, I think, are really fun. I think that's really fun, and I'm excited to maybe one day have a player that casts or goes through the process and enchants this way. So, but great, that's a whole spell done. So let's do another one, because this is what we're here doing, and like this is what I really like, and like I say, I think this is a really fun creative writing process to kind of come up with these. I love sitting here and just kind of going through and doing things like this. So Conjure Animals. This one's going to be a little intense to do. Conjure Barrage is going to be less intense. But Conjure Animals is going to be pretty intensive. But hey, that's what we're here for, right? That's why we set out 2 hours of stream time every day to work on these writing things, so we can dive into these more intensive things, and I like the idea here. So Conjure Animals, let's do this. I actually have a strong fondness for Conjure Animals right now, because one of my players in our weekly game has recently taken to using this one to kind of create an army of lions around himself, which is really fun. I think it's a really cool. It's a really thematic use of it, because this campaign is taking place in sort of like a Serengeti type of setting, and so there's just lions everywhere, and so they're kind of leaning into it, and I think that's really fun. Hey, Head Reaver, not a whole lot, just working on doing some turning spells into possible enchantments, which is really fun. Hopefully things are going well with you. So okay, so Conjure Animal. Oh wait, I didn't do. I gotta do like little flavor text that I like to do for these things. And my immediate thing is to just say, like Storm from X-Men, which is like my immediate thought when I think of Call Lightning, always, every time. I mean, that's like exactly what it is, right? You're just summoning a storm. They should just call it like Call Lightning Storm rather than Call Lightning, but you know. So, okay, so with Conjure Animals, let's see here. So this is another one that, again, I don't think there's going to be difference in how this one appears, whether you enchant it on an armor, a weapon, or any other item. It's just it's gonna just be an enchantment. That it's kind of the same no matter what you do. So on any item. So let's see here. Summon face spirits that take the form of beasts and appear in unoccupied spaces that you can see within range. Choose one of the following options for what appears. And then we got all those things. Each beast is also considered fey, and it disappears when it drops to 0 hit points or when the spell ends. So I think a lot of that is just going to be pretty much the same. I don't think we need to modify that, because the idea is you use the item to cast the spell, and you can do it. And again, I'm gonna set the limit to once per day. If this is going to be an enchantment. So let's see here. First off, I need you to keep bullet pointing this one. Let's delete that bit of extra stuff here. I really wish that it would. There we go. I want it to keep the same format, because it bothers me when it's not the same format. Let's see here. We can get rid of that little bit there. We'll make that a bullet point too. So, once per day, when casting the imbibement, you summon face spirits to take the form of beasts and appear in unoccupied spaces you can see within range. Choose one of the following. Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. And like these types of things too, with these summons, I kind of always imagine someone having like I like to think about it as someone having you know, a Thanos style gauntlet that they can like snap their fingers and cast the spell or something like that. It's kind of how I always imagine this type of thing going. But it's like, if people want to have magical underpants that when they want to cast it they just fart, then hey, you know what, that's up to player discretion how they want to set things up. But I play pretty loose and let people do what they want to do with it. I think that's what makes it fun to play these games, because people can really just do exactly what they want with it. But at any rate, each beast is also considered fey, and it disappears when it drops to 0 hit points when the spell ends. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think we need to edit that a whole lot. Summoned creatures are friendly to you and your companions. Roll initiative for summoned creatures as a group, which has its own turns. They obey any verbal commands that you issue to them. No action required by you. If you don't issue commands to them, they will defend themselves from hostile creatures, but otherwise take no actions. As a baseline, I think that's really good, and that sets it up again where I think this is going to be a really fun enchantment if our players accidentally end up with a some sort of what am I trying to say here? Sentient or cursed item, I think is what's going to get really interesting. Hold on, I just realized it's formatting really weird on me here. On any item, I want tab that. No. There we go. Just realized the formatting was off, and I don't like it when it does that to me. Again, I'm really obsessive about these things. I know how I like it, and I don't want OneNote to get too fast and loose with my formatting here. I did it the way I want it for a reason, because I want it that way. Alright, summoned creatures are friendly to you and your companions. Roll initiative for the summoned creatures as a group, which has its own turns. They obey any verbal commands that you issue to them. If you don't issue any commands to them, they defend themselves from hostile creatures, but otherwise take no actions. Instead, I'm going to change this up a little bit for the imbuement. They defend... if you don't issue any commands to them, they defend the owner of the imbued item from hostile creatures, but otherwise take no actions. I think that kind of makes it a little bit different and a bit more true to what the enchantment would be. It's like you summon them as defensive things, and they're linked to that item, so they will defend that item, whatever it is that you decide to use for the enchantment here. So I like that. I think that's a good little edit. GM has creature statistics. Sample creatures can be found below. I'm going to just say, I'm just gonna, just for the sake of brevity here, I'm gonna say summon fae spirits, take the form of beasts. Yeah, I'm not even gonna actually put that in there because it's like beasts. It's beasts that fit these challenge ratings, and so I think that's just like, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we need to copy and paste this whole list here, and I think that's really helpful because I don't want to have to copy and paste all of that in there. It's gonna really clutter up things in my notebook, so we're just gonna not worry about that. So at higher levels here, when you cast a spell using a certain higher level spell slots, you choose one of the summoning options above, and more creatures appear. Twice as many with a 5th level slot, 3 times as many with a 7th level slot, 4 times as many with a 9th level slot. I think that is perfectly fair. And we're just going to change the language to reflect that it's an enchantment and not a cast spell is what I want to do here. And we want to bullet point this one. So at higher level, when you imbue an item with this spell at a high, I'm just going to say at a higher level. At a higher level. I don't know why that hyphenated higher level. Those are just like 2 separate words, right? Doesn't seem like it would be grammatically necessary. Whatever. I don't know. It's not worth thinking about. I mean, everything is worth thinking about if it catches our attention, but I digress because that's a tangent that we don't need to spend hours on. So, let's see here. You choose one of the summoning options above, and more creatures appear. Twice as many with 5th level, 3 times as many at 7th level, and 4 times as many 9th level spell. Imagine that. Like that's what one of my players was laughing about, the concept of 4 times as many of 8. So that's what, 32? Just an absolute army. An absolute army of these things that just come in and just by death by 1,000 cuts end up clearing everything out for you. But I think that's good. Again, this one, when the nature of this spell is that it causes something to appear, so like we get this a lot with Conjuration, we don't see a whole lot of differentiation between like offensive and defensive uses. It's more so just that the item serves as the conduit to summon whatever is being summoned. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because a lot of these other ones will have some really interesting separate impacts based on, are you casting it with an item, with like a weapon as part of an attack? Are you doing it with a defensive item as part of your reaction? Things like that. And I think that kind of adds a lot of interest to things, and it leaves a lot of opportunity for players to get creative and use their own ideas for these things, which is one of the reasons why I really like this system of just letting my players enchant things with whatever their little heart's content. I don't know, it's a really fun system, and like I say, it's more exciting and interesting for players to do it this way rather than just giving them like, yeah, you find an amulet of +1 protection or something like that. Like, it's just, there's a lot more personality involved here, and the thing that I really like about it is it gives players the opportunity to build specific items that they want to without having to get rid of the items that they start off with, because a lot of players, I know I'm this way, will start off giving them, like, it's a basic item, right? But it's flavored to have some sort of meaning, right? It's the breastplate of their their grandfather, who was a great general. It's the sword given to them by their mother or whatever, who was one of the most prominent women warriors back in the day. Things like that. Like, it's more fun to me, and my players tend to agree. It's more fun to have a weapon that is exciting because of the flavor rather than the +1 status. So by using this system and letting our players just enchant things, they can keep that specialized flavored weapon or armor or whatever the item is, while not sacrificing the opportunity to become stronger. And in some games, that might be the point, right? The point is, are you willing to make sacrifices to grow stronger? And I think that's perfectly valid. So this system might not work for you in your game, but that's the reason that I do it. And it's the reason that my players like it, because it just lets them, it lets their items become those magical legendary items that you can then pop up in subsequent campaigns as just like a callback to that fun thing that you and your friends did beforehand. And that's what I really like about this. So anyway, that turned into more of a tangent than I meant for it to do. But I think this one is going to be really cool once we start doing our sentience and our cursed state. So if, while the players are creating this item, it becomes sentient, if it's good, I like to imagine the creatures that are summoned will be very cuddly and will stick around a bit after the battle to get some scritches before taking off back to the Fey realm. I think that's perfectly logical. And then evil, I'm going to say the creatures are very ill-tempered and will always attack anyone who approaches other than the caster, regardless of if they are friendly to the caster. So yeah, like your friends are gonna get bit if they try to pet that dog, right? That's the evil thing there. Lawful, I'm going to say the creatures always obey every command to a T, and will loyally defend the caster if no other orders are given, which is kind of the spell as it is, but I feel like that's kind of what the spirit of lawful is, right? The spell dictates what happens, and lawful is just like the sentient item, though it may have its own thoughts, will always do exactly what it's expected to do. Whereas chaotic is much more fast and loose, and we're going to say the creatures are poorly trained and may choose to attack different targets or even ignore the caster altogether. So they're just like really unruly. They're not necessarily malicious about it. They're just very unruly creatures that are just like, nah, I don't feel like it. Like I'm imagining when you're playing Pokemon, right, and you do a trade, and your buddy, you think you're gonna game the system because your buddy's all like, oh yeah, I'll trade you my level 100 Mewtwo, so that way you can beat all of the gyms super easy, starting with Brock, right? And you get super excited about that, and you think it's gonna be rad, and then Mewtwo never listens to you. That's kind of what I'm imagining with the Chaotic. They're just very poorly trained. They don't have any interest in doing that. So now for the Cursed, which is gonna be fun here. So extra powerful benefit from these. So again, with Cursed, I like it to be, it's even more powerful than you expected it to be, but there's a drawback. And my hope is to try and make it balanced enough that players will, that players may debate with themselves whether or not it's worth it to still use the Cursed item, is what my hope always is. That, like, even with the negative effects, they'll still be like, gosh, I know this is bad and this is hurting me, but God, these attacks are so great. So I'm debating in my brain right now how I want to do that, because I'm thinking it's either they can get stronger creatures, or the creatures that they get are stronger versions of those same things. So I think what it is, I think here's what I want to do. For this. The creatures summoned are powerful shade versions of the intended beasts. They appear as dark, smoky shadows with piercing white eyes that never blink. All attacks made by the creatures have advantage. So, like, they always attack with advantage. Unless there's something that, like, would give them disadvantage, in which case it would balance out. But it's like all attacks made by the creatures have advantage. But the side effect that I'm thinking is the creatures have insatiable bloodlust and will not dispel. Dispel? Is that how you do it? Dispel. Is dispel just not actually a word? That can't be it. What am I doing wrong? Oh, I'm adding 2 L's instead of 1. See, this is why I'm not a professional writer and why all of my streams are free, because I'm not actually that good at it, and my advice should really be taken with a grain of salt. Alright, the creatures have insatiable bloodlust and will not dispel until they are killed in combat. If all enemies are slain, but any of the summoned beasts remain, they will turn on the caster and their allies. So it's like, if you're really in deep doo-doo, you can summon them and they'll be extra powerful, right? And so they can really help you out in a pinch. But if they don't all die in the course of the battle, they will turn and they will try to rip you to shreds, and it's going to be up to you to kill your own summoned creatures. And so what I think we say, what it takes to remove, we'll say must be removed by magical means, or else the item will self-cast the most powerful creatures it can to try and fight you to stop you from removing it. So it's like if you try to take it off, and if anyone helps you try to take it off, it'll self-cast, and they'll turn on you, and they'll try to, they would rather kill you than you just, like, simply remove it. And I kind of have this idea in mind that it's like the nature, like with all these cursed items, like my mindset is that, like, the cursed item almost like because any item draws from the ether for its magical stuff, right? Even casting a spell, that's you drawing from the ether to channel magic. And my idea is that these cursed items kind of become like black holes or these weird voids in the ether that absorb energy as much as they do channel it and transfer it. And so the idea is that when it's attached to you, it's content because it can draw off of your energy. And so if you try to remove it, it will want to just like kill you to make you completely part of the ether so it can absorb you entirely, sort of like as a vengeful spirit approach to all of this. Is what's going on in my brain when I kind of think about that and why the item will rebel against you when trying to remove it. And I think it's really fun. So there we go. And if that's not a good enough reason to do any of this, then I don't know what is. So, all right, we're going to keep working on more spells. I'm going to keep doing more of this because I'm having fun with this. Like I say, this is just a fun creative outlet for me, and hopefully other people are enjoying watching it. So I'm going to keep going, but I need to take just like a 2-minute break. I need to run to the bathroom and refresh my beverage so that I can keep on going for another hour here at least. So I will ask just a little bit of patience from y'all out there. I know you guys have it. I know you guys are cool people. Like I say, this is going to just take like a minute or two, and I will be right back. So sit tight, and I will be back very soon. Thank you. All right, back at it. Thank you so much for waiting. I, again, appreciate the patience. My bladder appreciates it. And yeah, back to it. Back to it. I really like doing these. I hope this is a fun and interesting thing for people to see and think about, because I think this is a really fun thing. And I think, to me, when I think about tabletop RPGs and the reasons that people play them and stuff like that, I always kind of in my own head think that these types of situations, right, playing around with rules and changing things up, you know, for the sake of doing fun homebrew things that are fun for you and your players, like, to me, that's always the entire kind of point of playing a tabletop RPG. Like, if you didn't want to have that flexibility, I feel like the better option is to just find a multiplayer game, right, and do that, right? Playing Skyrim, or playing, you know, if you can find a game that has like multiplayer within the same world and all that kind of stuff. Like, games are the place to go for inflexible approaches. I always feel video games are. Tabletops are the opportunity for you to have a framework, and then you can just make whatever changes and modifications to the house around that framework that you want to kind of create the exact experience you and your collective group, your friends, you know, whoever you're playing with, your friends, your family, your colleagues, whatever it is. It's like these games are the chance to sort of play fast and loose with these types of rules to create, again, the exact story and experience that you all collectively want to have. So hopefully this is fun and interesting, or at the very least, even if you don't want to do exactly the system that I'm using here, hopefully it's at least inspiring, and it gets you thinking about other ways that you can approach these games in ways that'll make any individual game more unique and special to you and your friends. Because that's the other thing about it too, is when you do stuff like this, I feel like these types of systems are the ways that we can add our own personal touches and specialties as DMs and players to the games that we're part of, to help make sure that any experience with any given group is never the same as it is with any other group in the world. You know, it's like, this is so like, I'm putting on display my style of doing things as a world builder and as a DM. And my hope is that people kind of understand, and I'm hoping that I transfer the idea that I'm not doing this because I think my way is right or the best way to do it, but rather this is my way to do things, to be able to put my personal twist on it. And my hope is not that people look at this and say, like, I should be exactly like him, and instead looking at it and say, I should think about what my style is and what my personal specialty or approach or, you know, addition or subtraction, whatever it is. Like, I mostly, I guess what I'm saying is I hope that people take ideas and inspiration from our streams rather than taking, you know, a verbatim anything. And I hope that this does part of it too. And I think for me, one of the reasons I really like doing these spells as well is because I feel like this type of stuff is what really makes the experience one that is a fantasy-driven one, right? Using magical spells and having a world that is just rich with magic and wonderment and stuff like that is what really sets this type of fantasy world apart from, you know, the real world or a sci-fi world or a horror world or something like that. I feel like magic is really sort of the core of all of that, and that's one of the reasons why I really like coming up with these spells and presenting them in a way so that they can be enchanted on an item that anyone can use. Because I feel like it really makes the experience much more D&D, right? Much more fantasy. And I mean, the same would hold true like if you're playing Pathfinder and stuff like that. I feel like it's, I don't want to say D&D, but just like fantasy driven. It makes the experience much more fantasy driven if you allow for everyone to, in some way, shape, or form, tap into that magic. You know, and like, certainly within classes there are usually ways written in for players to have sort of magical strength and magical abilities and stuff. But when we just make it so that a player, even if they're just a fighter, that all they do is swing a sword, if they have a way to, they themselves as that character, tap into that concept of magic and create an item so that even if they themselves aren't magic, they can still serve as a conduit for the magic of the world through their items, then it just kind of helps bring them in there. Because I always feel like there's almost a conceptual divide between a wizard or a warlock or whatever and a fighter. And sometimes that's really perfect, right? If you want to do a game where you're all just like non-magical people within a magical world, then by all means don't do what I'm doing. But for me, and again, this kind of relates to what I'm saying, where it's like, this is my personal touch and my personal taste, and I hope that people just kind of find that interesting, as opposed to trying to use that as a roadmap, right? And more so this is an idea generating attempt on my part than it is a here's how you should do things. It's like no. Here's how you could do things. But I don't really know where I'm going with this rant. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I hope people find it interesting. I hope people are liking it. I'm having fun with it anyway, and I mean, for me, that's the most important part, because I have a day job, so I don't need to make money off this, so I just want to have fun with it. So hopefully that translates through my streams, and people can kind of see that I'm really doing this because I really enjoy doing it. And that's kind of what I always want to do, and one of the things I really hope I maintain, no matter how much my channel does or doesn't grow, is just that, I'm sitting here doing it for enjoyment and for fun. I don't ever want my stream to turn into something where I'm doing it for ad revenue. I'm doing it for clicks. Like, I don't want to be sitting here analyzing algorithms. I want to just have fun doing it and know that the people here are sort of getting their own fun from watching me do it. But I don't know. Again, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Maybe I'll stop pontificating and actually get back to what the title and description of this stream indicate it should be about. Alright, so we got a couple cool spells going on there. Let's get another one. Let's just keep doing it, right? Let's just keep doing it. We're on a roll. I'm having fun with it. I'm having fun with it. But yeah. Hey man, I'm gonna call attention to it, Head Reaver, because you're a cool dude and I appreciate you being here. No, like I really like getting distracted with viewers and commenters and stuff like that, because like that's the point of streaming to me. It's like, if I wanted to just like not be bothered and just write stuff, then I wouldn't stream it, right? It's like, what a silly thing to do. If you want to not let people take part and participate in a way, then why are you streaming, man? So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. So let's do a spell here. Conjure Barrage? Conjure Barrage. No, it's Conjure Barrage. I just like to play with phonetics. Conjure Barrage. Dang it, and I can't even spell it right. Homebrewing a custom world and spells? Yes. So all of this takes place, everything that I do for this takes place in my homebrew world of Zaoria. Before I even got into D&D, I was a world builder as a hobby. It started, like, I can remember it being as early as, like, middle school, watching my older sister, she would hate that I used the word older for her, my big sister, watching her play the Myst games. And just the concept of a world that exists within a book that you could literally fall into was so fascinating to me. And the idea of creating, like, just the idea that, like, I could write something and that in a parallel universe that something actually exists and is a thriving, living world fascinated me. And so I got really into the idea of just trying to be creative and descriptive to imagine worlds different than ours that still could function based on, like, the physics of that world, whatever's in that world. Just the idea that you could sort of encapsulate an entire existence within a book fascinated me. And so I started building just for fun whenever I had time, all through, like, high school and college, just sort of writing short stories and creating places, and it eventually kind of turned into a world. And then in college, I got involved in tabletop RPGs, and it was a very easy shift from just world building to DMing, right? Because like I already had a world, all I had to do was slap on some stat blocks and stuff to it, and suddenly you've got a D&D game. And so it all just kind of fell into place. And so that's kind of what we're working on. I do have I have an entire world, and in fact, you know what, you're gonna get me all passionate about it here. I'll pull up the map for my world here. Let's see here. Pull that up for you. Here we go. Load up, baby. Load up. You can do it. I know it's a big map. And kabloomers, this is my world. So this is my world that I've created. And I slapped on, you know, over time I would kind of create up, like I would thank you, I appreciate that. I would come up with different, like basically the way I go about making campaigns, or at least the way I did for the longest time, and I still kind of do, is I imagine a place and what would be an interesting sandbox of fun stuff for people to explore and interact with in that place. Over time, I've kind of solidified a lot of facts about this world. This world is a post-apocalyptic one in which a cataclysmic event in which all of the different realms, kind of all the divisions within the realms were sort of shattered and ripped apart, so that all of the realms started intermingling, which caused a whole lot of damage and magical radiation within the world, as well as all kinds of creatures that didn't belong within the mortal plane to show up in the mortal plane. And as a result, we ended up with this world where all of the existing races kind of all had to convene and work together to survive in just a handful of little fortified cities, which leaves us with a world that has a countless number of abandoned cities and cultures that have just been forgotten over the course of a couple thousand years, that now, as things are after that event starting to finally calm down, our players are basically, anytime I write a campaign or a mission, it's with the concept that for some reason our players are adventurers out exploring these lost and forgotten environments. And that's kind of what the theme of all of my games are. And that's why I like to have magic be a really important part of all of my games, because it's like the introduction of magic where it shouldn't be is sort of the reason for my world existing as it is. And so I've got, whenever I'm writing a campaign at this point in time, you know, it eventually came to a point where I slapped on this hex grid, and I'll do within one hex about 10 levels worth of campaign, right? So the campaign that I'm writing on stream right now takes place in here, and it runs from levels 1 to 10, and we're kind of at about chapter 5 for like level 5 players is kind of what we're working on. And it's just sort of this ongoing project always to build this world, but it includes also building like building a pantheon, building a history, all of this different stuff that I love writing that just like really draws in my passion still for world building, even when I'm trying to sort of create something that's more rules heavy and more structured. It's still just, this world has all of this room for world building, which is why I love doing it. How big is each hex in miles? So I'll zoom in a little bit here. We have our scale here, so you can see kind of our scale. So each hex going from point to point is somewhere around 400 miles. This is like a full-sized world. It's a huge world. What about the economy? So that is an excellent question, and it is forever the bane. I imagine it takes a very special person to enjoy trying to understand an economy within a D&D world. And that's one of my favorite things about how fractured my world is. I don't have to think about a functioning worldwide economy. I can basically just assume whatever the economy would be within the nearest city and call it good. You are special. All of us are special in our own ways. And I am impressed with your interest and ability to come up with an economic system. My economy is essentially rules as written, and if there's something that isn't in the rules as written, assume 1 gold is about $10 and go from there. I know some people will do the gold standard as $100. Some people will do less and more and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know. I tend to not worry about that, because for my players, I tend to give them items and tools and resources more than money. So it's just like how we're going through, and today's focus is really kind of working on ways that players can do crafting an enchantment, right? That's kind of the homebrew or the house rule system that we're playing around with right now. I tend to focus on that stuff more, where gold is just kind of more of a way for them to make sure that when they're at cities, we can assume that they can, survive and get whatever supplies they need for their next excursion and do it that way. So my games tend to be pretty economy light. But, that's just because I've always focused on writing other things. Probably a day will come where I'll wake up one morning, I'll be like, all right, we're going to frickin' do this. We're going to write an economy, and it's going to happen. So one day it probably will happen, but as of right now, I don't focus too heavily on it, and instead let economy just be a yes and situation where players are like, I want to do this thing. I want to buy this thing. And I'm like, Dad, sure. How much gold do you have? Yeah, that seems like a reasonable amount. Call it good. Call it good. Yeah, exactly, Head Reaver. Using, doing it city by city works because I have kind of created this really fractured world, which is, a cool thing about it. And, that's kind of one thing that's fun about creating campaigns in this world, because a lot of them revolve around trying to reestablish a worldwide economy type thing, like a worldwide civilization, because it's been so fractured, but people really want to try and get trade going and stuff like that again. So let's see here. Oh, I see. So you really like to go with living economies and stuff, and so players can really interact with it, which is awesome. That is so much more in depth than I do. I do sort of do a system where it's I do pay attention to if players go in and clean out a shop of all the potions, and then they go back 2 days later, there's not going to be a lot of potions and stuff. So I'll do it to that extent, but I just don't have the brain format to handle that level of detail, and I find that really impressive that you work on that. Yes, I reward players with items and stuff and give them things. I give them things to be excited about rather than gold to be excited about. And so far my players are at least content with it. So I'm like, all right, we'll leave well enough alone and we'll work on other things. That's fair. Well, and the thing that's interesting about D&D, I think, is, and why I think it's really important for DMs to focus on their strengths and play to their own strengths and interests to create their own DMing style, is I think one of the best ways to get players interested in whatever your style is for you to be passionate about it. I always find that players are much more interested in a game that I am passionate about and want to keep playing than they are in a game where I'm less passionate about it but trying to provide an experience that is in a pre-generated game or something like that. If I'm not passionate about that, even if it's more clunky to do the homebrew stuff that I do have ready to go, players will have more fun with that than me trying to do a better put together thing. So I think it's awesome that you know what your niche is and that you play to that, because I think it just makes for better DMs in general. Ocean currents go from left to right. So here's the thing with this world. It's one singular continent, largely speaking, but the world kind of goes on beyond the borders a little bit. And it's because there's this sort of this dense fog that exists and makes the ocean itself completely not traversable. And most suspect that there is a magical quality to this fog, as anyone that goes in there largely is either never seen again, or they just sort of one day reappear out of the fog from where they went into the fog. And that's kind of where the gloomy coast over here comes into play. The fog extends kind of onto this coast a little bit. And so this coast has a lot of that weird mystery about it as well, where there's just sort of this perpetual existing dense fog. So the currents are kind of haywire and nebulous. But yeah, and that's one of the things I always imagine would be a really fun campaign for players if they really wanted it. Is you could do a campaign where their goal is to sort of help try and see if there's a way to navigate through that fog or something like that. Hey, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're having a good time with it. A lot of downtime. Gotcha. Yeah. So like they can, so having players use downtime and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of using downtime. I really like using downtime, but I find that tends to be one that's very hit or miss with groups. Some groups really enjoy that downtime, and some groups get really impatient with it. So I always try to be really flexible about how much downtime plays into all of that stuff. And it's also why I like to have crafting systems and give players resources to use and have fun with, because I find that when I do that type of stuff, it gets players a bit more interested and passionate about using their downtime and stuff like that. So but no, I think shopping and stuff like that is a really fun one too. I think the thing for me too is on the DM side of things, I find shopping to be very boring. It's a struggle for me to care enough about like having that shopping experience when it's just like, give me gold and I'll give you items. It's like, I find it really boring, and I also have a hard time as a DM just like when players go to a shop and are just like, I want to find this magical perfect item. And it's like, okay, like either it's there, yes or no. So, yeah, fleshing out an economy can definitely help with that. I think for me, it's like, the thing is, it's not even how fleshed out and detailed it is really. It's having to come up with a shopkeeper that all they do is man the shop that I care about, right? Because like, to me, a shopkeeper is just a vessel, and I find other characters that are out and about to be much more interesting and compelling to play. So I try to keep that under control, and I still try to provide shopkeepers. But the other thing that I struggle with shopkeepers is if I do make an interesting shopkeeper, players become obsessed with said shopkeeper, and I'm like, they don't do anything. All they are is a vessel for you to get rid of gold and get items. Like there's nothing here, and players will still get obsessed with it. Hey Silver, how's it going? Spend the first half a quarter. That's how their business is going. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, like if you're having them run a business as a side mission, then that can definitely do it. I don't think I've ever had a group of players that wanted to have a business as their sort of side thing. I don't know that I've ever had players interested in that, and I think that's also part of it too. Is like when players get much more attached to the adventure out and about as it's going. I think it makes it a harder sell and harder to establish interesting in-city adventures. But again, I think that's just the nature of my games and how I run them, and it's why I don't try to force myself to do more than I absolutely have to serve the purpose, and instead just focus on the things that I am passionate about, because I think that's what makes a better game. Like I excel much more in creating mysterious, interesting dungeons for players to explore, and interesting challenges for players to try and work their way through. Like that's a much more functional part of how I run games, and so I just kind of lean into that and provide that experience for players. So, but yeah, that's my world. That's my world and all of its splendor. But I'm gonna bring us back. I wanna come up with another imbibement here, another thing here. Oops, there's my 1 o'clock alarm. 1 second. There we go. Just make sure that's all good to go. That way I'm keeping track of time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing too, is like the happy balance is there's no one correct happy balance, right? It's all just a balance of what the players like, what each player and each player / DM wants within the game is the important part. And that's why I say it's so great when DMs lean into what their specialties and their interests are, because that's what keeps their That's what keeps their games special and unique, right? Because each game is special and unique, and that's like the value of playing a tabletop as opposed to just doing a video game. Is every experience is different. It's never going to be the same as any other group of people. So it's just 2 a.m. Jeez, oh Pete's. I'm usually in bed by 10 p.m. I don't know where you get that energy. Of course, that said, I'm an early riser. I get up at like 4 a.m. so I can hit the gym and get my morning training sessions in before I have to like go to work and all that kind of stuff. So. You want to know more about the world? Yeah. I mean, the world, like, what you should do is you should stop by also when I do my other streams. Like, every Tuesday I do lore-based streams where I'm working on just, like, the history, the lore, the pantheon of my world and stuff like that. And then Mondays and Fridays are when I work on the campaign that I'm currently working on. So you get a lot of history and stuff of my world in those ones. So there's my self-sell plug right there. That's me selling myself. No, like that's the stuff I work on a lot there. So that's fair. That's a good point. That's a good point. That shopping sessions can stretch out and fill up time so that it can take a lot of the pressure off of DM prep. I think the reason that that's not a big thing for me is because I spend so much time just as a hobby doing the world building and writing campaigns. I have entire complete campaigns ready to go for my players, right? Like I have notes and detailed stuff written out for multiple sessions. You know, we're talking a complete campaign has hundreds of sessions just already ready to go. And my prep is really just like taking 20 minutes to see where they left off and figure out which hooks and plot points I need to chuck at them. And that's just my style. So I never feel as much of a need to do that these days. You know, I kind of have a sort of pre-thought out story, and then it's more so my players are more so creating the details of a story that's already kind of been thought out, as opposed to pure sandbox approach to things. But again, that's just like, that's a DM preference thing, and I think, you know, if that's not how you do things, you shouldn't do it my way. Yeah. Holy, okay, so first off, if you're saying 5 a.m. by most nights, no. You go to bed 5 a.m. most mornings is what you're doing at that point in time. Yes, my things are horizontally like this because I'm using the Windows 10 version of it as opposed to like the older versions, which I think are the ones that still do it horizontally. I actually kind of miss the horizontal page. I kind of like the like manila folder look of it. I kind of miss that, but this is the way it is, and it comes with my my Microsoft 365 account, so that's just how it is. Yeah, Silver. Like that's 100% just like your style and your approach to DMing. I don't think there is a right or wrong one. It's just a matter of like how you like to structure games and the experience you like to provide your players. Like for me, I like to provide a very narrative experience for my players, and my world is one in which there are people doing specific things, and they're sort of more so reacting to those things that are happening. And that's just my style of presenting a story. But if you want to present a story that's much more the world revolves around your players, then then it's going to be a lot harder to prep things the way I do. I think it just really matters, or it really depends on what your approach is. Yeah, like I say, I don't think there is a right or wrong way to do it. Let's see here. Conjure Barrage is the next spell that we're doing there. See, okay, so I'm with you. Okay, like I'm with you in that I love the peace and quiet of the night. But I like front-loaded in my days. I wake up really early while everyone else is still the fuck asleep. So that way I can enjoy all the silence of everyone having just gone to bed. So I come at it from the opposite approach. And I'm someone who's much more motivated. Like I wake up ready to go. My alarm goes off and I'm up and I'm ready to go. So that's my thing. Yeah, some people are all about improving. Some people are 100% about improving their hedgehog. And I think the thing for me is I improv the conversations and the details, but I like knowing what the story beats are doing, because the thing is like, I like having, like, I'll improv the details that happen. I'll improv the details, but I like, it's easier for me to improv when I have characters that have predetermined motivations and goals, right? So I find a villain to be much easier to play when I already know what that villain wants, right? I already know what that villain is trying to go for, and it's basically, they're going to approach their goals, and if our players want to stop them, they need to try and figure out what those goals are, and they need to head them off, you know, rather than always having my villains be sort of reactive to what the players are doing. But, you know, again, 100%, it's just a matter of what your personal style is. It's 100% what type of story and experience you like to provide with players, for players. I don't know, I kind of like the cicada rhythm. It makes me think of summer, and, you know. Oh my goodness. No, I know what you mean, though. Like, once you kind of are in a system, well, again, that's the thing too, is like, everyone's got their own system and their own rhythms, and just like with DM styles, sometimes you just have to go with that. Sometimes you just have to work with it, you know. And know what works best for you. I know for me, I work best if I can get started early in the morning and then be done with anything important, you know. Like, I'm best if I can be done with anything important before like 8 p.m. Because after 8 p.m. my motivation is gone. I'm just like, I just want to go to bed. I want to sit on the couch and watch TV until I can go to bed. and that's my thing. Head Reader, if you've got stuff to share, I've got a Discord server. If you're interested, if you really want to share stuff, you should get yourself hooked up with that, because I have channels and stuff on there for sharing various homebrew things that people find or create. Oh, you're already in it. Perfect. There we go. That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, no, there's a lot of good places to share things there. So I have a running joke to that point. Like, I have a running joke with my team. They once plotted to steal the cart from a vegetable salesman. You know, it was just, I was just doing a goof on the Cabbage Man from Last Airbender, right? I was just doing a goof on that, and it was a guy with his cart of corn, and they were just like obsessed with it, and like they spent like, and this was way back when it was like they were all brand new to D&D, and so they were just kind of in the law random, I can do whatever I want like mindset. And so they spent a good like hour plotting how they would like steal this corn cart from this poor innocent salesman. And so we have this long running joke, and I still haven't decided if I'm gonna actually go through it with it or not, where one of their final villains would be the corn cart man. And it's a running joke. It's a running joke. I still haven't decided on if I'm gonna do it or not, and I probably won't decide until the very end, because I don't want them to be able to predict it. If it's gonna happen, I want it to be a real surprise for them. I want it to be a real surprise. Oh boy. Let's see here. Whoops. I thought I already turned that off. Alright, there we go. Now it's good to go. Goofy alarms. There we go. Alright. Oh, players always do. Players always do. There's two things that you can... There's two things that you can guarantee that every group will do. Every group will become fixated on a character that you never meant to be anything more than just a random name. I am always prepared for the fact that I will be like, yeah, you see a random person in an alley, you know, just describing a scene. It's like, yeah, you're entering the market. There's a people in the alley, and one will be like, who's that guy in the alley? It's like, I don't know. It's Jim Bob, the crazy hobo. I don't know. What do you want? They're like, what's his story? What's up with you? I want to know everything about you, and I want to know your full history, and I want to turn you into one of our roving NPCs that joins our group, and you're our bard, and you sing songs about it. It's like, that will inevitably happen. And the other thing that will inevitably happen is your players will, at some point in time, even if they avoid it for a long time or come back from it, like head down the dark, like go to the dark side for this, and then come back from it, your players will always spend some time as a group of murder hobos that will just violently attack anything that moves. It will inevitably happen with any group. That's just how it goes. And for all of those things, I equate it to the fact that no matter how much we progress as humans, ultimately within us there's still the ape brain that is very reactionary to random things, and will like randomly fixate on something and be like, oh, I want to make you my baby, or will randomly fixate on things and be like, I must violently assert my dominance. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, with creature taming, like that's one thing. I always have players that want to do that. And with smaller groups, I'm usually a bit more I'm a bit more free with letting them tame animals, so that way they can have just like an additional creature to take some of the attacks and stuff, which is why my current group has a pet lion. We did that. But then there's always a certain point in time when I will cut them off from all of that stuff too, because the fact is like they'll like, you know, give an inch, they'll take a mile type of thing. And so they'll get obsessed with always doing that kind of stuff. Oh crap, we got a raid coming in. Oh man, this is already getting intense. Welcome everybody. We're sitting here discussing random crazy things that happen when you're DMing. Welcome everybody. Glad to see you all here. Come on in. We were working on coming up with spells and stuff, but it turned into us sharing stories of our players being buttheads in our campaigns. Oh my goodness. Nah, welcome everyone. Welcome. Maybe this can be the cue that I have, like, oh shoot, maybe I should actually do what my stream says that I'm doing and work on these homebrew rules for a little bit longer before we call it a D&D writing stream. Oh boy, we've been working on coming up with working on sort of my homebrew system. I've got, within my D&D campaign, I've got a homebrew system that allows players to take any existing spell and like find a way to imbue it in an item, so that way they can have like special enchanted items. And so we're just kind of going through, and it's just an ongoing project I have where I'll sit down and just sort of one spell at a time imagine how that spell could turn into an imbuement on an item, as opposed to just being a spell that gets cast. And so that's kind of what we've been working on here. We did a couple spells already, and now the next one on the list here is to do Conjure Barrage. So I'll go ahead and bring us back in here and we can see it. I try to keep them as true to the spell as possible. So I'll always start off by copying and pasting the basics of it, and then just going from there. Although one thing I want to do for this, I want to just read it really quick here. So Conjure Barrage. Throw a non-magical weapon or fire a piece of non-magical ammunition into the air to create a cone of identical weapons that shoot forward then disappear. Each creature in a 60-foot cone must succeed on a dexterity saving throw. Creature takes 3d8 damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. The damage type is the same as that of the weapon or ammunition used as a component. That's perfect right there. So this is going to be an awesome imbibement. I'm already into it. Let's see here. It's had a player who tried to sneak past a dragon from the lair while the other players were trying diplomacy. Oh, that is such a classic approach. That's such a classic approach. I always love that approach because it requires a whole crap ton of luck. A whole crap ton of luck for those things to work out. And it almost never does. And I always love it because players will inevitably, when they try to do wacky, crazy things like that, right? They'll try to do that kind of stuff, and they will immediately, if it doesn't work, they will immediately become so annoyed. They'll roll like a 12 on their stealth, and they'll be like, yeah, no, the dragon sees you. And they'll be like, what? Oh, come on. Like, 12 isn't bad. It's like you're trying to sneak past a dragon to steal from the one thing that he loves in this world. Like, he's probably going to be pretty aware of what's happening right now. Like, you think that he hasn't had people pull the whole, we'll distract him while we do, while one of us tries to steal stuff. Players will inevitably get all kinds of irritated with that. And as a DM, I thrive on that. I think it's great. I think it's great when they do that. So, anyway. So this imbibement is one that I feel like is inherently only going to serve well for weapons, given how it is. But I'm going to say that this can be cast on any item. So we'll say on any item, because my thought is they can throw, like if they were to throw a dagger, they could in theory like throw a dagger of barrage, right? And the dagger just multiplies in the air. And so if they wanted to be weird and say the boot of barrage, and they just do it so that way if you chuck a boot at someone, suddenly like 50 boots go flying at them and they just, they get the boot, then like, I don't care. Like if that's the game you want to play, then you play that game, my friends. So I'm going to say this can go on any weapon, or rather any item. And we'll say, yeah, because it says you throw a non-magical weapon or a piece of non-magical ammunition. I'm going to just say you throw a non-magical item. Actually, no. Here's how we're going to say this, because this is an enchantment. You throw the enchanted item or fire a piece of, we're going to say enchanted ammunition. Enchanted ammunition. And here's where like the limit of the enchantment is going to be here. To the air to create a cone of identical weapons. An identical, we'll say, yeah, we'll leave it as weapons. If you throw a glove at someone with the intent of hitting them with it and hurting them with it, just like a midair slap with a glove, it becomes a weapon. Shoot forward and then disappear. Each creature in a 60-foot cone must succeed on a dexterity saving throw. Creature takes 3d8 damage on failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Damage type is the same as that of the weapon or ammunition that is used as a, we'll say, is the same as that of the enchanted item. Now I'm going to insert a limit here, and this is what's going to make this one really fun, I think, and really interesting for players. The enchanted item must be recovered to use again. So this is not something, unless they intentionally double enchant an item to also make it something that can return to them right after they've used it. It does not automatically return to them, so they got to go find it again. And what I think would make that really fun is if you have a particularly careless player who tries to use something like this, they could end up giving it to their opponents, which I think makes this really fun. So I think this is actually a really interesting one to do as an enchantment, and I think it would be really fun. You know what I just realized? We never did a flavor text for this one, which is like arguably one of the most fun things for this. So Conjure Animals, we're going to say conjure fuzzy BFFs, and that's gonna be the flavor text. Anyway, sorry, I just ooh shiny on that one, but okay. No, I think that's all we need. I think that's all we need for this one, and I think that's excellent. So now we got to think about what this item is going to be like if it is either sentient or cursed, which is, I keep saying it because it's true every time. It's like one of my favorite parts of this system that I've conjured up for my players, and one of the things that I'm always excited for when my players use it is the fact that doing it might result in a sentient or a cursed item, and I like to randomly assign personality if it is a sentient one. So, and the general trend I try to find when I kind of come up with what will the traits be if it's sentient is good is like obedient, evil is defiant, lawful is targeted, and chaotic is no restraint. So if it's good, I mean, really, like a lawful good thing is really just like an item that talks to you and then does what it's told. So if it's good, and what we'll say if it's good is the item will make sure that conjured copies of itself only target enemies of the thrower, right? So if you throw a knife at it and you have this barrage of knives, like if you have a good, if you have a good one, it'll only target itself for the good guys, right? And then if it's evil, we'll say we'll say the item will choose who it wants to hurt, often targeting allies it perceives as a threat or challenger to its owner. So it's like, even if it's a friend, if there's an ally that this item thinks is like, hey, this guy's trying to encroach on our dominance as like the leader or the badass of the group or something like that, it'll target them. Like, it's gonna have its own goals essentially. So if it's lawful, all conjured items remain within the intended cone of the caster. And then if it's chaotic, the cone is shorter and wider actually, no, I'm not going to say it like that because it's still predictable. May redirect the cone or change its size slightly as it has very poor aim. Because it's not necessarily malicious, right? If it's chaotic, it might just like have poor focus. And I don't think we need to do anything else for that. I think that's good as it is. So now this is the fun one, cursed. So with cursed items, it's not just a matter of like, oh, it's bound to you, you can't get rid of it. Like, that's part of it. But I always like to try and make a cursed item be one that is still in some way, shape, or form tempting for the player to use. Like, they might still want to use that. So I always try to come up with something that would be like extra powerful, something that's like just extra frightening. You know, so like for this one, I would say the extra powerful benefit might be twice as many items appear, resulting in, you know, increased damage, or like extra items appear so that it's like we could say like 5d8 damage or something like that, right? So it's extra powerful, but I feel like the problematic side effect might be like you would do something. I usually like to make it so that it harms the user as well. So like my thought is that it drains energy from the caster to create those extra items, right? So I kind of want to flavor that to make it really interesting, some way, shape, or form. So what I'm going to say is item, if cursed, boom, that's what we're looking for. There we go. And then there it is. Okay. Let's see here. Item will draw from the caster to create additional copies of itself to do 5d8 damage when used. So we'll do that, but then the problematic side effect is yeah, I did it again. There we go. Okay, drawing energy from the user results in the user taking half the damage caused to enemies. Right, so this can be a really good way to really cut down on a lot of enemies, right? This could do with just one action a lot of damage to multiple enemies, but the player is going to have to take some of that damage too, because to do that extra damage, it's drawing from the life force of the person using it. And so then the best thing about it is, so here's what I always like to, here's how I like to do it also. So of course, must be removed by magical means. Otherwise, let's see here. Otherwise, the item. So I have two ideas on what could be done, but like I always like to make it so that the item will basically try to punish you if you try to sever whatever spiritual tie is with the item. Oh, and that's actually one other thing I wanted to hear. Used item also creates a magical bond that can be followed by the user to find it after use. So like that's another thing. So it's like it won't necessarily it doesn't gain the magical ability to reappear in their inventory or their hand or whatever you want to do, but it will call to them. So it's like, oh, I know it's over there. If they lose track of it in the battle or something like that, or if it gets stolen, they can follow it. But it draws energy. It must be removed by magical means. Otherwise, the item, and here's what my thought is. Otherwise, the item will self cast so that a barrage of copies falls on the user and anyone trying to help them get rid of it. So if they actively are like trying to get rid of it and trying to break the bond that they have with it, it will self-cast and harm you as a warning to not do it. The other thought I have is if the user tries to just leave it behind, the bond pulls harder and harder the further they go, requiring increasingly difficult constitution saves to break free, or else the player is compelled to go back and retrieve it. So it's like if they try to just leave it behind, they're not going to be able to, right? They won't be able to be like, well, they can be like they in theory can leave it behind, but they have to create increasingly difficult. And I think that's something that would be fun to sort of determine based on the level and the skill of the enchantment when players go about it, right? Or like the matter of like how cursed it is. That's why I'm not putting a specific number in there, because I think that'd be an interesting one to have be dependent on other factors unique to the character, right? The player's character or whatever it is. But I think that would be a really cool cursed item to have. Like almost, very, very, very one ring to rule them all, right? Where it calls and it compels you. And then like that's the other thing with cursed items and sentient items. I always sort of imagine that they also have the capacity to betray. So if they have, particularly if they're evil or cursed, they have the ability to sabotage whatever the current wearer, user, whatever it is, are trying to do for the sake of meeting its own goals. I always imagine that they kind of have that capacity. So I think this is a good one. Now the last thing that we need to do here is flavor text here, and I don't know, Conjure Barrage. I don't know, flavor text. My first thought is we are legion for we are many, but that's like such a as much as I love that concept, so overused. And for only a spell, level 3 spell, we can save we are legion for we are many for a much more powerful thing. So for this one, I'm thinking something along the lines of I'm gonna say so much more than a single attack. Something like that. I don't know. Flavor text. Why not? It's just fun. It doesn't functionally do anything. But there we go. We did it. We got this one. All right, so I'm looking at the time here, and it's just about 1:30 where I am. I don't know what time it is where you are. We just know that it's on the half hour, which means that it's time for me to call it a writing stream, because what's going to happen is I'm going to take a short break, and then I'm going to be back to be doing some video gaming. We are today is Thursday, which means I am going to go back to No Man's Sky, No Guy Sky. Because apparently that game got awesome while I was not paying attention to it. I never played it because everyone hated it when it first came out, and then like people were telling me, they're like, no, this game's really rad. I was like, I thought everyone hated that game. All right, well, I'll play it. So I'm playing that one for the first time now. So if you want to hang out and see that, then stick around. Like I say, I'll take like a 15-minute break. Just I got to rest my voice and use the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it apparently did have a massive redemption arc, and I gotta say, I overall am enjoying it. It's not, so far, it's not been my favorite game ever, but I'm having fun with it, so we're gonna keep playing it. But yeah, so I'm gonna take like a 15-20 minute break, and so if you want to come back and hang out some more and talk about video games, chit chat while I'm doing spaceman things, then you can come check back in a little bit, or you can just keep hanging around, and I'll be back shortly. Otherwise, there are a whole lot of other really awesome D&D streamers out there that you guys can go check out. I will not be offended if you go support them as well. Either way, though, I appreciate you guys for stopping by. Thank you so much. It's so much fun when there are people here and they're interactive and stuff. That's why I do the streaming, right? Like, it's like I say, if I didn't want to interact with cool people while I'm doing my streams, then I wouldn't stream. I would just do whatever I'm doing. So thank you for joining me. If you want to be more involved with the stuff that I work on, if I mentioned it already, if you want to share homebrew ideas and stuff like that, chat about D&D or video games or whatever, and also if you want more up-to-date announcements on, if I have to cancel one of my normally scheduled streams or something like that, get yourself hooked up with my Discord server. I try to be pretty good about putting updates and announcements on that, as well as being interactive with other stuff that people share on there. So that's a good thing to check out if you're interested. The other thing to check out is I do have a YouTube channel, so if you want to see other things that I've worked on with writing, if you want to see other games that I've streamed, all that kind of stuff, I put all my VODs on my YouTube channel, so that way they're there for longer than what Twitch keeps them. So you can find both of those links on my Twitch page. So yeah, check those out if you're interested. Today is Thursday, which means the last day I'll be streaming this week is tomorrow, and as of right now, there's nothing stopping me from doing it. So I will be back tomorrow. We're going to work on our campaign for writing tomorrow. So if you want to see a bit more like actively functional, how I go about designing dungeons, how I go about structuring a campaign. I know we talked a lot about how I do a lot more planning than a lot of DMs. A lot of DMs are more reactive in their approach, whereas for me, I plan out a story. So if you're interested in seeing how I go about that and making it work without having it be too railroady, then you should come check that out. But with that, I think that's all the announcements that I have. I think that's all the announcements and self-plugs I have, so I'll just say it again. Thank you so much to everyone who stopped by. You guys are cool people. I have so much fun doing this, and like my audience is already so much bigger than I ever thought it would be when I first started streaming. I started streaming and I was like, I bet you I'll get maybe 1 or 2 people who check in maybe once a week, and it's already like way past double of that. So like I'm a pretty happy guy here. I think this is a lot of fun, and I appreciate you guys. So thank you for making this a good time for me. I appreciate you. I will hopefully see you shortly after my break. If not, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow or next week or whenever I do see you, no matter when that is. I appreciate you. Take care of yourselves. And, yeah, I'm going to be back pretty shortly here. So sit tight, and I will see you soon.